Poke the Bear is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 140, presented by FanDuel. I'm Evan Marinofsky. That's Conor Ryan. Conor, what is up?
Evan, I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. Doing great. And there is a lot to talk about with the Bruins, considering it's the end of the season, the dog days, the regular season. I mean, even that Blue Jackets game Thursday night needed some fights to kind of light a spark to it. It was just, it lacks a little oomph during the end of the season. But some news came. Unfortunately, we weren't recording during it, so we couldn't react to it in the moment. We're recording right after.
One of these days.
One of these days it will happen. It's incredible that we've been doing this for 2-3 years, and it's never happened ever. It has never come close. We have been spoiled by the deadline many times, but it's never happened during a recording. One of these days it will happen, though. It's going to happen at some point. It has to.
And it's going to be something that's really terrible. We're like, oh, imagine that happened during a podcast. That'd be crazy. And it'll be like, oh shit, Bergeron's retiring. All right. And it'll be me being like, oh. That's what the actual video will be. It won't be us being like, wow, Evan, what do we think? It'll be that. It'll be me being like, all right, see ya.
I don't want to be seen right now.
Yes.
But anyways, Bruins signed Mason Lohrei to an AHL amateur tryout agreement. I know a lot of people are wondering, hey, why isn't he just signing an entry-level contract? And it's because that would burn a year of the entry-level contract, and it's the end of the year, and you don't want to do that. And they don't need to do that at all. They don't need Mason Lohrei up on defense with the Bruins or with the Boston Bruins. But it's finally happened. Lohrei, again, we were kind of waiting all week. We thought on Bruins Beat it would happen immediately. Obviously took a few days. Probably, the kid probably took some time to make it. It's a pretty big decision to make. There was an interesting story Matt Porter did in the Globe on McAvoy deciding to turn pro, and he was sobbing all the way on the drive to Providence. I guess that's what happens when you go from Boston to Providence. You just immediately start inconsolably crying. I think that's maybe what happens.
Evan's just kicking Rhode Island while it's down, I guess, huh? Oof.
No, I like Rhode Island. I like Rhode Island a lot. Some beautiful, beautiful cities. I'm trying to gain back points here. It's in the New England region. I can't be kicking people
out. It's not
out.
Connecticut. That's true.
No, it's not Connecticut. Logan Mullen, though, would disagree on that. Logan Mullen used to say, Hartford's actually, Connecticut's kind of nice. I like Hartford a lot. And I'm like, are you okay? Are you good? You all right? But whatever. People can, as long as you like where you live, I guess you're happy.
That's all that matters.
That's all that matters. It doesn't matter what we think. That's what you think. Mason Lohrei finally deciding to turn pro. And we talked about his impact on Bruins Beat a little bit of where he might fit. But what's kind of the big things for him this year that he kind of has to seal up in Providence?
Yeah, I think for him, you look at just this small stretch of the season. I think it's just about getting your feet kind of planted where you are in Providence, right? I think we mentioned this briefly before when we talked about the fact that he's likely turning pro. And I think it was after Ohio State season ended. I think it was Rand Pecknold, the head coach at Winnipeg. I think Mark Diver tweeted this out that he pretty much was like, yeah, that guy could play the NHL right now, which I'm sure if there's other teams that were more desperate for, immediate help on the blue line, he probably would be getting a few games up in the NHL ranks this season just to, take that next step. Bruins have the luxury of not having to rush any of these guys. You can make the same argument with a guy like Fabian Lysell, right? Like, you look at his high-end skill. Does he need more time in Providence? And I think when you look back at where a guy like Lysell was early on in the year, you had people who were like, yeah, bring him up there. Trial by fire, have him learn up there, which there is a merit to that, I guess. But the Bruins, are in this spot where they don't need to do that. They're giving these guys ample time to learn the ropes of the AHL. Because I think, barring the rare prospect who goes right to the AHL ranks and dominates right away, doesn't happen. It's a higher level of competition. The physicality, there's less ice to work with. So I think for a guy like Lohrei, we mentioned this before, that usually defensemen are the ones that have the longest kind of development curve, especially when I think when you're a guy like Lohrei who has a skill set that is based in the offensive zone, involves a little bit more risk taking. I think for him, the most important thing, get a few games up in Providence this year, learn the ropes, feel comfortable, because I think there is going to be some, bumps along the road for any guy like that whose game, it's not like he's this really steady, D zone only guy, shutdown guy. I mean, who knows what he becomes later on in his career, but I think for all these guys that have to first take those lumps of the AHL and adjustment to that, I think that's the most important thing, is just getting a few games, see where you measure up against the competition, and build off of it. Even if it's so couple of games with Providence, you learn from it. You go into the offseason, you tackle what you need to do. Because again, I think so many guys have this curve where, as much as Charlie McAvoy went right from the AHL to the NHL and dominated right away, doesn't happen. Like, look at Jakub Lauko, high-end talent guy overseas, goes to Providence. His scoring numbers drop a bit, and now he's more of a fourth-line grinder kind of guy, right? I think Lohrei just needs to go to Providence for a couple games and see where he exactly fits into the equation.
Yeah, again, his offensive instincts are good. You see it. You just see how good he is as a skater. I mean, he was a forward until recently, until relatively recently. So again, he seems like a guy who is going to take a year down in Providence, and I think that's a good thing to have. Maybe next year, if they need him up at the on the big club at some point, then you bring him up. But to me, I mean, I don't think he's a guy you need to rush. There's no need to do it. I know we mentioned him as a potential Matt Grzelcyk replacement down the road. That still could happen. We'll see how Providence kind of goes. Again, Torrey Krug kind of came right up, scored, what was it, like 4 goals in 3 games against the Rangers, or something, or 4 goals in 5 games against the Rangers in the playoffs. Like, I don't think that'll be happening this postseason with Lohrei. There's really no need to bring him up there. And the other thing that's interesting is, like, I think a lot of people forget about the AHL. Obviously, there's a lot of prospects developing, but there's also a lot of older guys who, A, just have careers down there, or B, are trying to work their way back into the NHL. And it's very much, it's a lot tougher than college, because there's a lot more riding on the line for a lot of guys. I know that's one thing college coaches a lot of times will say to players who are thinking of making the jump. It's like, well, you're not going to immediately go to the NHL and start dominating. You're going to have to spend a lot of time in the AHL, where it's a little bit of a tougher lifestyle, and you're playing against guys who have a lot riding on the line. Guys like Chris Wagner, who want to get back into the NHL. These guys are not going to just let you go out there and skate around and do what you want. They're going to make life difficult on you. I don't mean Chris Wagner on Mason Lohrei, but I mean guys like Chris Wagner around the league who could make life difficult on a young, exciting prospect. So it's a big jump. And again, it's going to take, it'll probably take some time, just like it has for Fabian Lysell this year and lots of other guys. But moving on to the big Bruins, the Boston Bruins, clinched the President's Trophy on Thursday night, which everyone kind of went, really? Kind of the same thing. Okay, you like Connecticut a lot? Good for you.
The pizza's good.
Same type of vibe. And I saw the Bruins posted the graphic, and it was all the years they've went on to win the President's Trophy. It was like 1990, 2014, 2020. It's like, ooh, that's a lot of heartbreak. Ooh, especially considering last time they won the President's Trophy, a global pandemic began.
Yeah, that wasn't great.
That was also not great. So the President's Trophy has a very negative connotation to it, as it should, because no one, people just don't really win after winning the President's Trophy. But this team feels a little different. This team's been different all year. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen in the playoffs yet. But what we do know is the Bruins have home ice. Which I think everyone's going to focus on the curse. It's going to be the curse. Hey, one of the last times there was a big curse in Boston, Boston broke it. The Red Sox, curse of the Bambino. Maybe this is the team that breaks the curse of the President's Trophy. So, but again, I think people should more focus on, hey, you will have Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Final in Boston, which I think is a very, very, very important thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the thing you really have to focus on. And again, I think, what is it? Only 8 teams that have won the President's Trophy since it got introduced have won Stanley Cup. Still, when you look at how much variance there is in hockey, how wild the Stanley Cup playoffs are, more often than not, like, a higher seeded team is usually one that can, orchestrate a deep run. So it's not like this is, I think, an indictment on the Bruins or anything like that. But again, I think, as you said, the most important thing is just having home ice. That I think the road to the Stanley Cup goes through Boston, and I think people can look at, that can get countered very easily, being like, well, look at 2019. Look what happened in Game 7. We know. That game sucked. That game
Actually, Game
was
7
not good.
they never played Game 7. They never played Game 7.
Just like the national championship game. BU in Providence, the ice melted. So,
yeah.
but again, barring
Ice
a mishap like that, people will be quick to point at that. But just look back at last year, right? I would say you probably win that series against Carolina if you had that one more game in Boston, right? Like, I think when you look at a few of these really even matchups, sometimes the difference is just how you are on home ice in your own building, the psychological advantage of, being in your own house, not having to travel, all these things that I think does go a long way when I think you're so hyper focused on the next shift, or, you're trying to, you have the blinders on in terms of what you need to do to win a 7-game series. Just having that added comfort, that familiarity really does help. And again, it helps that the Bruins are stupid good. I mean, they've been good all year, but in Boston, very, very good, right? I mean, you have that distinct advantage. There's a team that, knows how to win, knows how to take care of business in their own building. So it's just going to be a situation where, I mean, who knows? The Bruins could go on a warpath this postseason and wrap up a couple of these series in 5-6 games and be like, oh, it didn't really matter. That being said, I think when you get to this point of the season where you're just looking to put yourself in the best possible spot, getting healthy, getting, parts of your roster all set, locking up home ice advantage is at the top of the list, right? In terms of ways to make your life easier once you get to the playoffs. The Bruins went out and did that.
That's the thing. I mean, again, it's one of those nice safety blankets to have. If they play Pittsburgh in the first round, I don't imagine it going 7 games. Or even the Islanders might be a little tougher, just considering they play a little stingy, better goaltending, things like
Boring.
that. Boring as hell.
Boring.
Yes. Boring playoff team in general. But again, I mean, it's a nice thing to have. And we're talking about really nice things to have. Our exclusive wagering partner at CLNS, FanDuel. Connor, why don't you tell the people about our good friends over at FanDuel?
Absolutely. Massachusetts, listen up. The wait is finally over. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, is now live in Massachusetts. And new customers in Mass can get in on the action with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/Boston. FanDuel.com/Boston. Finally, you can bet on all your favorite sports, from the money line to point spreads to player props and more. And frankly, that's the best part of FanDuel. You can bet on anything. You want to wager on how many goals David Pastrnak is going to score this season? Go for it. How many walks the Red Sox are going to give up?
Ugh.
I mean,
oof.
What wasn't that great? But you know what? It's probably on there. It's probably on there, guys.
It's a silver lining. It's a silver lining for Red Sox fans. They walk a lot of people. You get some money. That's a good thing.
That is true. You can do it all over at FanDuel, and nobody beats that. Don't miss your chance to get $200. $200, Evan. Do you know how? $200.
You were to say, do you know how much 200 is?
Do you know how much 200 is? My journalism degree is kicking in there. Do you know how much $200 is, Evan? It's $100. It's a $1 bill. You take 200 of them. You know how many Arizona iced teas you can get with that? $200.
Seventh grade
bonus bets.
7th grade Evan his eyes would pop out of his head. I mean, my God,
Absolutely.
200 Arizona iced teas.
Unbelievable. $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/Boston and make every moment more on America's #1 sportsbook. 21 plus and present in Mass. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Hope is here. Go to gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support.
Connor, do you remember when you were in like elementary school and it would be like
No,
right?
I didn't go.
You didn't go. You just said you were homeschooled. You're a homeschooled
Yes.
kid. That's what you
Yes.
were. But remember those days?
Anyway.
It really screwed me over there. Oh my God. Remember the days though, like right before winter break or even summer break, and it's mainly summer break, and it's the last couple of days before school ends, and you're not really doing anything. Remember those days? You're just kind of sitting in class. Maybe the teacher puts on a movie, or you read a book, or you have recess for like an excess amount of time. You just don't do a lot. There's not a lot to do. Summer's coming, curriculum's kind of over, where you stand, the grades are in, even though in elementary school, like what grades were there really? And even later in middle school and high school, the days before summer, you didn't do much. It's the same with the Bruins right now. The Bruins are kind of in that period where everything
Recess,
is
baby.
they're in recess period. They're in recess, baby. Everything is set. They've won the President's Trophy. They handed out end of season awards on Thursday night. The 3 stars were announced, all those things. And they've still got 7 games left, right? They got 7. I'm counting correctly, making sure the math is still working there. 7 games left in the regular season. And it's tough because, Penguins, Blues, you have the Leafs in there, the Devils, then you have the Flyers, the Capitals. You end the season in Montreal against the Canadiens. So some tougher games to get up for. I mean, I know, again, you got it's like the last season, the Maple Leafs and Bruins have their spots locked down. They're playing each other at the end of the year. Game doesn't really even matter at all. But, you don't want to have a complete letdown because they do have the playoffs coming. But up until then, you've got some time and kind of kick your feet up a little bit. But what are you looking for out of this team going into the playoffs in these last 7 games?
Yeah, I think, the number one priority is just going to be resting guys, getting guys the necessary time off just to rest and recuperate. I think you look at that Columbus game, we were over at the Garden, and it was an optional skate, and Bergeron was one of the first guys out there. And we're like, all right, he's not playing today. Then he ended up playing. I was like, okay, but I think you're going to see a lot more going forward. It's not like I think there's going to be just starting this weekend, Jim Montgomery just rolling out like the B team or anything like that. They're bringing up their impromptu Black Aces. Yeah, they already have them ready to roll. But I think every game you're going to see 2 or 3 guys that have a lot of mileage, have some nagging injuries, probably to rest and recuperate. And I think you won't see anyone disagreeing with that. Like even like you look at that Carolina game last weekend, and we were both like, well, it would be good if they did beat that team. Just get over that hump. Of course, they ended up doing it, but when you see that Bergeron and Marchand and Lindholm aren't playing, we're like, that's fine. Okay, like
scheduled loss.
Carolina's a tough team, but the most important thing is getting those guys healthy especially if they're dealing with some injuries. So, and of course, they ended up winning that game anyway. So I think it's a positive anyway. Like you already have a little bit lower expectations maybe in terms of what the games are going to be, but you can still put up a competitive game. And, if guys like Lauko benefit maybe from instead of playing 5-6 minutes, they get to 10. How much do some of these other players, Zaboral gets more minutes. If you can still field a really competitive team while giving some of these guys that are going to be key to your success rest down the stretch, it's going to be huge. The one thing you do have to weigh is I don't think this is a hot take or anything, but you got to figure out that power play. It's not great. Still really hasn't been good. You look at that Columbus game, that should have been a game where you hope that they just like score 2 or 3 goals. It's not a very good team, Columbus, but get a few goals, feel good about yourself, and get rolling.
Billy Sweezy, though. Local kid, Billy Sweezy.
Yes.
Ooh.
Yes. The pride of Hanson. So,
pride of Hanson. The dad going nuts in the stands.
Of course.
Over the fight. It was awesome.
Beautiful. But I think that's one thing where it's like, all right, do we sit out all these guys knowing that the power play is still not – it's like when you're supposed to take like a big test, like a final, and you hit like the point at 3 a.m. where you're like, well, I can't remember anything anymore in my head. So I'm just going to go to bed. Like, I'll just figure it out in the morning. And then you get there and you test, and it looks like you're reading it in Wingdings, and you're like, shit. All right, this was a bad idea. I should have just like operated on an hour of sleep instead of 4. It's like, do the Bruins run that risk of like, all right, we're not doing the nuclear option here. We're not taking Pastor off the top power play unit or anything like that. Like, these are the guys we're rolling with. They're going to have to figure it out because we don't really know what else to do. Maybe they take that approach, but still, you'd like to see at least one game over these final 7 of them getting a power play goal or 2, showing a little bit more of what this team can do when they're operating at a high level on the man advantage.
Going to be hilarious. Game 1 of the playoffs, they immediately score a power play goal like 5 minutes into the game.
It's like a one-timer from Pasternak, and it's like, oh, okay. Yep.
They're back. They're fine. But it's still a little bit of an issue. I will say the one thing over these last 7 games, obviously, yeah, you want to rest guys. I think that's priority number 1. But would you feel any different about them? Would you feel like less confident even if they went into the playoffs after the 7-game stretch and they went like 3-4? Like, I feel like there's part of me wants to be like, you want to finish kind of strong and go into the playoffs a little bit hot. But part of me is also like they were hot the entire season. If they go 3-4 over the last 7 games, is it really, time to hit the panic button? But I guess it is a little worrisome. Do they, if they did go like 3-4, 2-5, they would never do. But like 3-4, even 4-3 ish. Like I think hopefully bad habits don't start to kick in over that amount of time and kind of bleed into the playoffs. But I still think that they've had a good enough season that a bad stretch at the end of the year, I don't think is like the end all be all. I think they'll still be a-okay throughout the playoffs. Now, do you think they should be gunning for the record, for the NHL record? That's the real question.
I mean, it's cool. The problem is, like, it's a nice little. It's a great feather in the cap. Like having the all-time record for wins is a sizable achievement. And if this team doesn't end up winning a cup, you can be like, is this the best team ever assembled? Like when you look at just how much talent there is, and the records that prove it.
Wasn't it the 2016 Warriors that were like the best regular season team ever, and that was the year they lost to the Cavs
in the
LeBron
final, right? Game 7, yeah. And
3-1
again, like
lead.
that's half the story. You are part of the narrative, but it's because another team toppled you, right? Like it's not exactly what you want to be remembered for. And again, it goes back to I think this obvious point. Like it's something that always cracks me up when you look at like early on in this day when this team was stacking up wins, and people were like, "Well, it's not going to matter if they don't win the cup." It's like, yeah, no shit. Yeah, no shit, pal. Like, yeah, I think we're all very cognizant. I think we're all very cognizant of something like that. So you're not really breaking new ground with that. Again, it would be really nice, but I don't think it's necessary or it's worth the risk of like, in order to secure it, they have to win their final 2 or 3 games. It means that Montgomery has to roll out a full squad against, a team. I don't want the Bruins to be going into Montreal against a team with Rem Pitlick and Michael Pizzata and these like goons and having to roll out a full squad. Like it should not come to that. And if it does, lie on that one game, and again, Bruins should beat Montreal, like in terms of just the matchups, not at the risk of rolling out guys and having someone dinged up for the playoffs. So that'll be something I think worth watching. So would be cool. Again, I think you probably ask the players. I'm sure they like to have it. Listen, it is a great accomplishment, but if they don't get it, they'll say post game it didn't really matter. And if they do win it, they'll be like, focus on the playoffs. Like there's more important things at stake here. So would be nice, but you shouldn't devote, a lot of resources, a lot of time and effort towards hitting a regular season record when there's a whole lot more to play for in the next couple of months.
It'd be very concerning if you saw them win it and then like champagne's popping in the dressing room. You're like, all right,
yeah, that's not great.
They're out in the second round. Like, isn't the MLB, teams celebrate winning like divisions, right? Like if memory serves, like if you win the AL East, like they're popping bottles, you get like T-shirts from it. So,
yes.
Fortunately, we've not seen the Bruins do any of that. Yeah, fortunately, they have not gotten into that. Connor, over this last stretch of the regular season and into the playoffs, what can the people look forward to from you over at Boston.com?
Yeah, we're going to have you covered every step of the way with game recaps, columns, features, breakdowns, all that good stuff over at Boston.com. So please read all of our stuff over there. Of course, we have you covered on everything related to Boston sports, whether it's Patriots off season, Red Sox, their season starting. Hopefully they can throw strikes. That would be helpful.
That'd be cool. That'd be nice.
Celtics smoking the Milwaukee Bucks yesterday, and they're getting ready for their playoff run. So we'll have you covered every step of the way with everything going on in Boston sports. So please read over there. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all that. And remember to subscribe to New England Hockey Journal. That is Conor Ryan. I am Evan Marinofsky. You Poke the Bear listeners. Have a great rest of your week.